Gold speaks in whispers. Columbus heard it first in his dreams, then in the rustling pages of Marco Polo's journals, finally in the screams of those who stood between him and his obsession. The metal called to him across an ocean, its siren song drowning out any voice of conscience that might have given him pause. The year was 1492, and humanity was about to witness the birth of a new world and the death of countless old ones. They would make fine servants, he wrote of the Taino people in his journal after his first encounter with them. With 50 men, we could subjugate them all and make them do whatever we want. The words reveal not just colonial ambition, but a mind that immediately categorized human beings as resources to be exploited. Within hours of making contact with a new civilization, Columbus had already mapped their utility in terms of servitude. The historical record, scrubbed clean for centuries in European retellings, preserves the brutal reality of what followed. On Hispaniola, Columbus instituted a system called the encomienda, which demanded that every Taino over 14 provide a hawk's bell full of gold every 3 months. Those who failed had their hands cut off and were left to bleed to death. Many Taino committed suicide rather than live under such conditions, with mothers killing their infants to spare them from the world Columbus had created. His governorship of Hispaniola revealed a man whose cruelty was as methodical as his navigation. Witnesses described Indians being tested like animals by having their heads cut off to see how sharp the swords were. People were roasted on spits, torn apart by dogs, and burned at the stake. Even his contemporaries, hardly known for their humanitarian values, found his methods excessive. Francisco de Bobadilla, sent to investigate reports of Columbus's brutality, arrested him and shipped him back to Spain in chains after witnessing the governor hanging natives who had done nothing more than speak ill of him. "Gold is the most precious of all commodities," Columbus wrote. "He who has it has all he needs in this world." The statement reveals a worldview in which everything and everyone could be reduced to transactional value. Islands, peoples, souls, all weighed on the same scale as the precious metal he sought. The Taino population, estimated at between 250,000 and 3 million when Columbus arrived, was reduced to about 500 by 1550. This catastrophic population collapse was the result of a perfect storm of disease, overwork, malnutrition, and outright murder, all direct consequences of Columbus's management style and priorities. Columbus's treatment of women deserves particular attention. In his letters, he boasted about how native girls aged 9 to 10 were particularly in demand among his men. He allowed his crew to capture and rape native women as rewards and participated in sex trafficking of indigenous girls as young as 9, whom he gifted to his crew members and fellow colonists. These were not the incidental excesses of colonial conquest. They were policies explicitly established and encouraged by Columbus himself. His fourth and final voyage revealed a man increasingly detached from reality, yet still dangerous in his delusions. Stranded in Jamaica, he terrified the local population into providing food by correctly predicting a lunar eclipse, manipulating their cosmological beliefs to serve his survival. The incident perfectly encapsulates his approach to indigenous peoples. Their knowledge, beliefs, and very lives were simply resources to be exploited for European benefit. Modern historians debate whether Columbus ever fully comprehended that he had not reached Asia. The evidence suggests a man so invested in his original hypothesis that he twisted all subsequent observations to fit it, rather than adjusting his understanding to match reality. This cognitive inflexibility extended to his view of native peoples. Unable to see them as equal humans with their own complex civilizations, he could only understand them as either obstacles or assets in his quest for gold and glory. What makes Columbus particularly disturbing to modern sensibilities is not that he was uniquely cruel for his time, though in many ways he was, but that his cruelty was so calculating. The systems of exploitation he established would serve as templates for centuries of colonial abuse. The transatlantic slave trade, plantation economies, and the genocide of indigenous peoples throughout the Americas all bear his fingerprints. His legacy is written not just in history books, but in centuries of demographic collapse, cultural destruction, and environmental transformation. The Columbian Exchange brought not just disease and horses, but new agricultural practices that reshaped landscapes, new economic systems that reordered societies, and new power structures that continue to influence global politics 5 centuries later. Today, the islands Columbus first encountered bear little resemblance to the paradises he described in his journals. The Taino people he encountered have been largely erased, their genetic heritage surviving primarily through mixed ancestry. The gold he sought has long since been melted down and spent, but the systems of exploitation he pioneered proved more durable than any precious metal. Perhaps the most telling aspect of Columbus's character lies in what he named the places he discovered. Rather than honoring the names given by those who had lived there for millennia, he claimed the naming rights as part of his conquest. San Salvador, Santa Maria, La Española, each name was an act of possession, an assertion that these lands and everything in them now belonged to Europe. In his final years, Columbus took to wearing a Franciscan habit, perhaps seeking spiritual redemption for the earthly paradise he had helped destroy. Whether this represented genuine remorse or simply another costume to wear before the Spanish court remains unknowable. What is certain is that his actions set in motion consequences far beyond his comprehension or control. The amber waves of Hispaniola's fields now grow different crops. The gold that so obsessed him has long since been shipped to other shores. But in the silence between historical facts, if you listen closely, you can still hear the whispers of those who paid the price for one man's ambition and the answering silence of a civilization that vanished beneath the weight of his dreams.